Hello and welcome to CHP Talks. My name is Beth St Denis. I am the guest host this week, filling in for Rod Taylor. Now, as many of you know in our audience, when God puts something on your heart, it is rare that it's meant to stay there. Sometimes you get a calling. It can start simply as a thought, or a quiet nudge, or even a conversation. But sometimes, over time, that little nudge turns into a spark, and that spark can turn into something big. And sometimes that spark turns into a mission. Today, we will be discussing Cheerfully. Cheerfully is a Christian charity that is dedicated to showing the love of Christ through education, advocacy, and helping people in need. Cheerfully has stepped up to the call. It is responding to the call in faith. It is meant to serve the community, build stronger communities, and really help further God's kingdom. Joining me today is Jay Palko, who is the CEO and founder of Cheerfully. Jay stepped into his calling and is caring cheerfully to help improve the community and to strengthen Christian values. So Jay, thank you so much for joining me today on CHP Talks. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Beth.
So Jay, why don't you tell the audience a little about yourself?
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm a Christian, a father of two, engineer by profession for about 25 years. Serve in my church, like to be active outdoors, and God called me to something different at the beginning of last year, something that we're going to talk about in terms of Cheerfully, which I am, as you said, the CEO of. And so, yeah, we're new on the scene, but we've got good things planned, and because I believe God has good things in store for us.
That's fantastic. So Jay, why don't we just jump right into it? What is Cheerfully and what is at the core of this charity?
Happy to do that. Quickly, I'll just give the charity disclaimer. The interviews, podcast recordings of any productions or any productions of other organizations, they do not represent for the beliefs or positions of Cheerfully. So any appearance on or contribution to any show, platform, or media of any kind is for the sole purpose of promoting the charitable purposes and activities of Cheerfully. So that's why I'm appearing here and now. And so I appreciate, like I said, the opportunity to let people know more about Cheerfully and why this is such an important cause that we are advocating for. And yeah, so uh, to give a little bit of a background on Cheerfully and what we're about, it's really a means to help parents enroll their children in Christian private schools and to grow those schools, as well to advocate in the public square on biblical principles, our beliefs, our positions, and as well to help the those who are destitute, those who struggle to meet basic needs, to help them and where they're at, to love our neighbor, so to speak. So these are the things that we are really focused on and align with our purposes and our activities according to how we are registered with the CRA.
Amazing. So why don't you give us a little background? What is the heart and mission behind Cheerfully, and how did you first get it started?
So at the beginning of last year was when things changed for me. So I've been, as I said, an engineer for 25 years, and it's been a good career. And so I still, in a lot of ways, identify as an engineer, as you can imagine. Uh, but as things were going and job changes, and there became an opportunity for me to pursue this idea. And so I thought that it was the right time. So went out and started looking into charity law firms and understanding what it means to register a charity. and how to go about doing that. So we were incorporated in May of 2025. Then we applied for registered charity status in June of 2025. And 6 months later, we received registered charity status on January 20th. And so some people might think, in our current culture in Canada, maybe, it seems unlikely that a charity like Cheerfully would be able to get registered, but it really was how would I put it? I guess a good process. And of course, it requires work answering very specific questions, ensuring that we are being clear as to what our objects are in terms of a charity, what our purposes and activities are going to be. And after a phone call in December and then another phone call in January from the examiner, on January 20th, we received registered charity status. And so that was ahead of the 9 months that they had, I guess you could say, estimated. You can go online and actually find what it is that you want to accomplish, for any given government service, and it'll give you a timeline. But that's the feedback, anyways, that we received from CRA. But within 6 months, we received registered charity status. So that's actually a fairly, we'll say, timely registration. And so I was very thankful to God for that, for how he moved some big blocks, got us through some challenges, and helped us to develop this idea and build a team with a board, 3 directors, and that's our organization. That's basically how we started. As far as our vision and mission, I think the best way to describe those is to read them. So I'll just do that. Our vision is to advance Christian influence in Canada by sharing the gospel truth about who we are in Christ, by engaging society and private institutions and the public square. And so our mission then is to serve Southwestern Ontario and beyond with Christian education support, biblical public advocacy, and by providing for the destitute. And so that gives perhaps a little more specific definition as to who we are as a charity. But ultimately, there is a real, I guess we'll say, soft spot for parents and kids, and the challenge of finding good education in Ontario that meets the desires of parents for their own children, and that Christians need to be more vocal in the public square. A lot of times we have fallen for the instruction from our culture to go to the corner and be quiet. And Christians are not called to be quiet. That's not who we are. We're supposed to be ambassadors, and bold ones at that. And then as far as helping those who are struggling to meet their basic needs, I just considered the fact that as a charity, we may get contacted, a phone call or an email saying we got maybe a family in need, somebody who's stuck, a change of life circumstances, employment, or perhaps a crisis of some kind, an illness, and they need help getting through the next couple of weeks, maybe month. But then really the long-term intention there is to, yes, help them with some practical needs, perhaps with gift certificates, that sort of thing, but ultimately to get them connected with a church in their area to not only help meet physical needs, but their spiritual needs, because sometimes those spiritual needs that are not being met or that need to be pursued are part of why they end up in a difficult situation. So, those are the 3 purposes and some of the activities that Cheerfully would be involved in.
Incredible. So, Jay, what led you to Cheerfully? Maybe you can give us a little background. You said that you were an engineer for over 20 years, and now you've stepped into the role of CEO of a charity. What really pushed you to start Cheerfully?
Well, as a Christian, if we didn't say it's the Holy Spirit, I think we'd be seeking our own will instead of God. So I would definitely say the Holy Spirit spurred me to do this. But also, I guess in terms of those events or experiences that helped to move me in this direction would be that God has commanded us to love Him and to love others. And so as I was advocating at the public school board in Windsor, Essex, the GEC DSB, I was just finding that it seemed like we were not being listened to, or that we just were not being received in a way that would be considered, I guess, productive or really thoughtful towards people of faith and Christian community. And so there's a real concern for a lot of parents who don't share the worldview that is currently in our education system. And this includes things having to do with DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, or SOGI, sexual orientation, gender identity, CRT, critical race theory, or gender ideologies, or what has happened to some teachers who have told me is that compelled speech, or really the usurping of parental authority, is what I think best describes what is happening. The parents want to choose the education for their kids. And so in that, and as I'm advocating and we're going to the school board and communicating this and wanting them to make changes, so it is there literally the job of a trustee to receive public feedback and to act on it and to share it with the other trustees so that the board can actually determine, what they can do to help, the parent or the concerned citizen. And so we just were finding that wasn't happening. And so as that was occurring, people were asking me, what should I do? And there are options, of course, in terms of homeschooling, and there's independent schools, specifically Christian schools. And I thought, how can I tell parents to send their kids to the Christian schools and not help them with that enrollment process? Because in Ontario, unlike other provinces, there is no financial support to parents who want to enroll their children in Christian schools. It doesn't exist. So I wanted to help do that, to actually provide a way for parents to enroll their children in Christian schools without that causing a financial crisis to the family. And there are a lot of families who, you can imagine, times are tough in Canada, and there are a lot of families who just can't do that. They're on the line. They're single income. They want to supplement the income, having trouble finding a job, or they just don't have a job that is paying enough at this time. And depending on the school, and if that school is a full-time school or a hybrid model where there's some homeschooling included, it follows the curriculum of the school, but that cuts down the tuition costs considerably. And depending on which school and what their tuition cost structure is. But in the end, it comes down to, can parents afford to send their children to Christian school? And the answer is, for many of them, is no. So in Ontario, we have around 2 million students enrolled in public school. The independent schools, this is a 2022 number, so we'll say it's perhaps gone up a little bit since then. There's around 160,000 in independent schools. And so there's some small, very, very small fraction of children who are enrolled in Christian schools. And I believe that needs to change dramatically. To me, it's unconscionable that parents aren't given the choice. I don't understand that thought process at all. And in honesty, I don't think there is a way to understand it. I will always disagree with it. The parents are the authority in the children's lives. That is how God has designed it. That's how He has commanded it to be. But unfortunately, there is a usurping and an interfering that is occurring in our education system. So this hasn't happened overnight. and I want to be part of the solution. But in order to do this, it's going to take all of us, as they say. Christians are going to need to lock arms, band together on this, because we didn't get into this overnight. This didn't happen just over a few years. This has taken decades to get to the point that we are now. And it's going to cost us to get out of this education crisis that we are in. And I say crisis in respect to people of faith, Christian parents who want their children to learn about God, what He desires for their children, and that their children are going to understand this and apply it to how they live, that they're going to not be only given one side of the story, that a Christian parent will say leads them astray. And that is the parents' call. That is for them to decide for their children. It is not for the state to decide. And so that, though, does require us to pay for Christian education out of pocket in Ontario. But there are people who understand this, they know it, and people who have the resources to support this. And that's who we're trying to connect with. And so then some people might then say, well, that's great. You want to get them connected, but you know, I guess in a sense, why you and how to find those resources. And I would say it's because these schools, they don't actually, people might say, well, why does it cost so much? Well, the cost to educate a child in a Christian school is less than the provincial cost to educate a child. They are more cost effective, but also one thing to understand is that cost to educate the child is not fully covered by the tuition cost that is charged to the parent. So they rely on fundraising. They are already short-staffed, and this is something that I believe I can help them with. And I can also then go out and say things that the schools, frankly, aren't in a position to say because they don't want the media showing up on their doorstep or anybody protesting them, giving them a hard time over how they educate children. But I can do that because I've been in those trenches and I don't mind it. So it actually, in a sense, energizes me. So that is something unique that Cheerfully offers. And because we are acting as a hub in the area, there are 5 major Christian schools in this area, but there are ones for the 401 that have contacted us. We can then help disperse those funds, those donations, as a registered charity to the schools as needed and as they see fit. And what I have found too is that some of the parents have seemed a little bit more comfortable talking to Cheerfully because it's a bit third party, and they're like, hey, I don't understand the Christian education in Ontario. I don't know what our options are, and if I go to the school, am I going to be somehow scrutinized or locked in? Which, by the way, the schools are not at all that way. They are very much wanting to help parents, but I have found that there is a bit of an intermediary role that Cheerfully can play in this, and to help educate people more publicly on Christian education and helping the kids. And being that's why public advocacy is also one of our purposes and involved in our activities, is because we can do this and go perhaps in a more vocal way, more direct way to the public, to our culture, and to our government about changes that need to be made so that parents are restored as the authority in their children's lives in Ontario.
Absolutely. And I really commend you because I think that is something that we're lacking overall is just parents having an advocate to help them navigate the options, to let them know that there actually are options besides the public school system. I really do commend you for that. So, Jay, do you feel a sense of urgency right now to build the momentum of charity, of Cheerfully, and to encourage the greater community to get involved?
Definitely. So right now, as I think people are all aware where our culture is at in Canada, we have unfortunately, in many ways, we have, I don't want to color it as all is lost, you know, cut and run, because that's not the case. And that's not where I'm coming from for sure. Quite the opposite. Stay and fight is what I would say. So, but yeah, in terms of the urgency, we know where our culture's at. There's a lot of uh, God-hating, anti-Christian sentiment that has permeated the culture in Canada, and that is just a reality. And any Christian who doesn't realize that, I don't think is watching, and they're not listening. And that in itself is is a wrong, really. I mean, I'm not here to throw shade at people, but at the same time, we didn't get here on accident. It's not oh my goodness, this just happened overnight. No, this is a decade slide into the gutter. And in the past 10 years, it has it has really seemed
Accelerate,
to have gone, say it again, sorry.
accelerated.
100%. Yeah, it's gone exponential. I mean, we are literally what is being advocated for is the corruption, the sterilization, and hard to even say, but the mutilation of children. That is what's happening. So people who are watching the news and listening to the news and just what's happening in their own backyard would realize that Tumbler Ridge wasn't an accident. Like it wasn't just like, oh my goodness, how did it happen? This shooting, who it was a it had to do with the that child, what they were exposed to at the age of 12, and what transpired over the next years that ended up them in a school with a gun. And there is data on this. Like this is not something that is hidden. There's a reason why the UK has banned these drugs and these surgeries. Like there is real action that's being taken, but it's not being taken here in Canada, and it needs to be. And advocates have spoken up. We're not the only ones. There are plenty of people in Canada who have said this needs to stop. Because when you tell a child they may be born in the wrong body, which they are never are, or that they can somehow change their gender, which you can't. I mean, all the cells in your body have a 23rd pair of chromosomes that tell you whether or not you're male or female. And that is biblical. That is worldview. That is what is taught in Christian schools, but it's not what's taught in our public schools. And so what happened in BC in Tumbler Ridge, 100% is just a horrific tragedy. But to sit here and not pretend like there isn't a cause, a role, uh, a contribution by our education system and what that power of suggestion is in the mind of a child, that didn't play a part in this, to me it's ignorant, really. Frankly, it's ignorant and it's dangerous. Um, because we all want to believe, that somehow we've got this covered. It's not going to happen again because we locked hands, because we had positive thoughts, or because we're wanting to make sure people feel okay and to affirm everything. But that is a failed approach. It's a failed strategy, and it will repeat itself in Canada. And our education system plays a part in this. And it is actually, sadly, these ideologies that are out there are very dangerous towards children. And that's why it's urgent. That's why there needs to be a commitment now to this, because it's not going to go away. And Christians, I think a lot of us, there are those who think, well, if I go along with not just tolerating, but affirming, or not actually taking up the cause, not actually being, the voice in the wilderness, not actually telling the truth when it hurts, that they can somehow avoid that calling, that obedient living, frankly, for the Christian, and still have a Canada that actually still, acknowledges the supremacy of God and the rule of law in a biblical way. You can't have them both. There is no neutrality in this, and that's why it's urgent. That's why we need commitment now. Because if you are watching, if you are listening, you will see that what has accelerated and has gone really truly exponential over the past 10 years, and what we can look forward to in the next 5 to 10 years, you should be deeply concerned. And you should realize that the Christian schools, they need your help. And that's why Cheerfully exists, to help them. So yeah, that's why I would say it's urgent and we need a commitment now, because we God has graciously held back, I believe. In all honesty, he's been merciful towards us. The the consequences of what has happened, and what happened in Tumbler Ridge. Um, it's a horrific tragedy, but it's not enough to feel bad about it.
Yep. Action has to happen. And
Yeah, 100%. And the time is now. Like there is no, let me think about this. Maybe tomorrow, I'm going to pray about it because I want to know God's will. Well, He wrote it down for you in His Word. He told you what you're supposed to do. And children are definitely the vulnerable in our society. They are the least of these. They are the ones who need adults, good Christian adults who know uh, how children are to grow up, how they are to be taught, how they are to be trained. And just so people understand very clearly, the Christian schools teach children to think. It is education, it's not indoctrination. Indoctrination is what is in our public schools. They tell these children how to think. They don't really offer them the option, is what I am hearing from parents and from teachers. And it's in the curriculum. It's there. You can read it for yourself. And at Christian schools, they actually do want the child to think for themselves, because ultimately when they leave school, that's going to happen anyways. And we're not naive and ignorant to that as Christians. We understand that. Ultimately, the child has to go out and learn to do life on their own. They are accountable to God. It's not anybody else. And they have to walk that road. But unfortunately, in our public education system, that's not what's happening. That's not what we saw going into the school board and interacting with them. They are not welcoming to people of faith. They do not want to hear Christian values. They don't want to talk about biblical principles, and that is, to me, it's sad. It's atrocious, but it's true. And so the Christian schools offer the Christian worldview to be taught, and they will teach. Ultimately, they're being taught to understand, to gain the knowledge, to learn, and then also to defend their faith and to use logic and reasoning to actually be effective, as an individual on the job as well, but as a Christian in a culture that often, in a world that often not just dislikes them, but hates them. And so they're preparing children for this. But if we don't understand this, if we don't act on it and quick, there is going to be a point of no return. There is going to be a point where the next generations will not understand, the Christian roots in Canada, that this country is blessed for a reason. And really, truly, and this is something that has to do with Christians being fully aware. Uh, the Bible says to be fruitful and multiply, and to train up a child in the way they should go. Well, Satan's into the opposite. He wants us to not even make it out of the womb, and he wants to give you a depraved mind. So there is no neutrality, and Cheerfully exists to ensure that parents are given the resources they need, the help they need to get their children enrolled in Christian private schools if they so desire. And I really believe it's not just Christian parents who want this. I believe that there are parents out there who may not have a faith in Jesus Christ. They may not profess that faith, but they understand the need for morals, values, and principles that are biblical. And the only place you're going to get that is in a Christian school. That's the only place you're going to get that. And that's just where we're at. So one, we have to accept the reality of where we're at, that the public education system is not going to offer a Christian worldview. You got to go to Christian school to get that. That's where it's going to be. They're gonna teach your child uh, biblically the way they should go, and give them a quality education in the process. This isn't just about teaching from the Bible. It's also teaching them to think properly, to use logic and reasoning, but then ultimately to do that, it's going to take all of us. The parents can't do it on their own. They just can't. There's some are able to, but that's why they fundraise, is because the parents can't do it on their own. The schools can't do it on their own. They need help, and it's going to take a community effort to do this. And so I'm definitely looking to be a hub in that respect, to be able to take donations and apply them towards these awesome causes, and we can do it. I believe there's hope, and it's something that we have hope in, but it's something that we have to do now. Like we need to do this now. It's gotten to the point where children they can't do it on their own. We can't expect children to go to public school and defend their faith against an adult who has authority in a classroom. That is not a reasonable request of a child. You're talking about kids who are in K to 8, K to 12, and some of the schools do K to 8, some of them do K to 12. And the authority figures who are in the schools, the administration and the teachers, to expect a child to be able to defend their faith to an adult who is given that authority, who frankly the parents are saying, you need to listen to your teacher, but then the teacher is undermining the parents. That's not fair to the child, and the child then is going to develop a real internal sense of struggle and trying to reconcile what their parents are telling them than what the school's telling them and what the church is telling them, what the education system is saying. And then you wonder why children get frustrated and come home and they can't wrap their minds around all of this. They can't. They're children, and they can't consent to what these schools are asking of them either. In terms of, hey, you want to change your name, you want to go into mixed gender sports, mixed gender spaces. They don't know what that means or what that all entails. But I'll tell you, some of the stories that I've heard, these children are in tears and not wanting to go to school because they don't want to be exposed to that. They don't want to be put in these situations. They don't want to be told that, yeah, it's okay that a girl is in a boy's space and the boy knows this is wrong. I have literally heard these stories. This isn't fiction. This is happening right here in our own backyard. And any Christian who hears that and is cold-hearted to it or closed or is apathetic or complacent or passive needs to check themselves. And I mean that with all due respect. I'm not your mommy, I'm not your daddy, and I'm not pretending like I'm your pastor or your spiritual leader. But Christian to Christian, you need to check yourself because you can't hear that type of experience that a child faces or that parents are facing and just look away. So
Absolutely.
sorry, soft spot.
Yeah, absolutely, Jay, for sure. Because here's the thing. Canada has moved so far away from the Lord, his teachings, his morals, his values. There's so many factors too. As Jay said, this isn't a year problem. This is decades in the making. The breakdown of the family. You've got single parents raising a child, and the school's actually raising the child. And then the child is conflicted, to your point. They're being told one thing at school and one thing at home. And as a child, how can they possibly process this?
Yeah, it's not
There's,
possible.
it's impossible. Exactly. So I can't stress to you and our audience enough the urgency of not only protecting the children, but raising awareness of what's happening in the schools and the churches. The churches also need to really step up and to the plate. And we have churches out there that are they're starting their own schools,
Yeah.
or they're helping to enrich Christian schools that exist. This is really fundamental to raise up a generation of Christian men and women, because the public school system and even the Catholic school system, they're failing, quite simply.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
to your point about the Catholic school system. So at one point, the public school system, the English, say public school system, English and French, but the public school system, not the separate. They had instructed me to go to the Catholic school system and share my beliefs there. But the Catholic school system is for Catholics. I'm not a Catholic. So my home naturally for the Christian, for the evangelical Christian, is the public school system. And that's who should be listening to us. So you're really, in a sense, if you're as a Christian, as a Christian parent, you are left without a home when it comes to our education system. And that's where Cheerfully comes in and where the Christian schools come in. And yeah, it's a sad fact, but really the Christian parent doesn't have an education home, so to speak, in Ontario.
So, Jay, for the audience, for everyone that's listening to this episode of CHP Talks, how can they help? How can they get involved? What advice would you give the members of our audience?
Oh, so much. There's so much that could be said. But I think we've shared a lot about what's going on, the reality of it all. And uh, parents need to really be informed as to what's happening in the schools, within the walls. Go inside and look what is hanging on the walls. Go and look and see what the curriculum actually is, what it teaches. And if you're not okay with that, Christian schools is an option. And there's no other way to put it. It's the best option, 100%. These schools really do try hard. They put in such effort to ensure. So I've met the principals. I've gone to all the five major schools. I've toured them. I've interviewed with the principals. I've met with them just to understand, you know, what it is they're teaching and how they go about doing it. And there are some differences school to school. That is true. But they really do their best to ensure that parents and their kids are helped. But in terms of advice, it's that, like I said, to be informed, know what's actually happening. Because what happened during COVID was parents started to actually see and hear what was happening in the classroom because they were having remote classes and virtual classes, so to speak. And because of that, it exposed a lot of what was going on. So there was an uptick in independent schools and homeschooling and in Christian school enrollment because of this. And if you know some of the regulations that are actually happening in our Christian schools, you will understand that the risk is real in terms of keeping secrets from parents, not telling them about if the child is thinking to change their pronoun, name, or gender as if they can, or mixed gender sports and mixed gender spaces. This is happening. This is regulation. This is part of the thinking. We'll say that, I guess, policies of the school boards. So educate yourself. Be aware of what's actually happening in your schools. Take that time and determine for yourself if you're okay with that. And I think a lot of parents will realize they are not okay with that. And so then reach out to the school, ask them, go to them. It's an open door policy. They want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. You contact me. We'll talk about that later, but definitely be in contact. Just reach out and ask the questions that you need to ask. And the schools will happily answer them. I'll happily answer them and find a way to get you the help. And also to chat it up. Talk to other parents, talk to teachers, talk to the administration. They will tell you also what they are facing. These teachers are being exposed to compelled speech. They're being told how to teach these children against their worldview, against what they really truly believe the parents want for these children. And so I would say definitely talk to other parents, talk to teachers, to the administration, and perhaps more importantly, ones that are in your church who are going to tell you straight what is actually happening in those schools and their thoughts on it, because I believe they will tell you what I'm telling you. Get your kids in Christian school. And so there's a lot of things that can be done, but to those who are saying, well, my children aren't in school, my children were in school, they're out now, and yeah, it's a thing. I'm concerned. I don't want kids to be exposed to that, but what, why should I bother? Well, these children are going to be the next generations who are going to be those who are in authority in our country, who are running this country, governing and ruling and making decisions, legislating, who are going to be the police officers, right? They're going to be your doctors, they're going to be your nurses, they're going to be your engineers, and how they do their jobs matters. And you do take your worldview into your place of employment. That's just the way it is. The idea that you can check it at the door is ridiculous. So these children are going to be the next generations. They are going to affect your life, believe it or not, in one way or another, or the people you care about, your family, your friends. They are. And you can have a role. You can have a say in how these next generations are going to be formed in their beliefs and how they think and how they act. And you can help that by donating and helping families to get them into these schools, to charities like Cheerfully, who we will take your donations and we will put them as best we can directly to the cause. We're a very lean organization. I'm the only paid employee. And frankly, right now, not taking a paycheck. And I'm just saying that so that people understand that I understand it's a startup and we're trying to get it established. And hopefully in the future, it can be full time, but I just want to be transparent with everyone. That is the level of dedication and commitment that our organization has. We want to see parents enroll their kids in Christian schools and to make that happen. And it's going to take time. Like I said, we didn't get into this overnight. It's going to take a lot of time. but there's always hope. God is good. He's moving in Canada. So all is not lost. And he's always at work. And that, if we repent and, and actually we wake up and we actually ask God, what should I do about this situation in our education system, helping parents and children? What should I do? What can I do? And you have options. But for a lot of people, and it's going to be, if you're in a position to, it's donate. Because in Ontario, there is no help for the parent in terms of financial assistance, zero. The other provinces do 50%. I believe Alberta, in some instances, even more. And that's why some of those schools are thriving. And the schools that are growing and thriving are the ones where there's community support. So here in our area, one in particular, they are one of the largest schools and have one of the best facilities because they have a strong local church community that takes up collections for them and helps them make it happen. I mean, this is just the way that it is, and it's a reality. And so stewarding your money, what God has entrusted to you, but it's all his. So we should look to him as to what we should do with that money. And there's giving to your church 100%. I'll be clear on this. You should be tithing to your church. However, you should also, because for Cheerfully, our verse, our founding verse, and I'm gonna read it off because I feel like I should have read it already. But it's 2 Corinthians 9:7, that each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. That's 2 Corinthians 9:7. And our stewarding of money, when people talk about this, whether it's your pastor, myself, whoever, it's not for the benefit of me. For Christians, how you tithe, your tithes, your offerings, and your alms, right? Giving to your church regularly, and maybe giving over and above for certain special needs there may be in the church or other ministries, and then the alms helping those who are not be able to meet their basic needs, who are the destitute. Uh, you know, this is what God is asking of you. He's saying, where is your heart at? Are you stewarding your money in a way that it's looking to him and his will, or is it towards you and your will in the now? So God will meet your basic needs. He wants you to have food, clothing, transportation, and shelter, right? He wants you to have all that, and he wants you to be content in what you're doing. But he also wants you to realize that loving others is it's sacrificial, right? You should be giving and looking for opportunities to help others, as you have opportunity to. And so that's why the Bible talks so much about money. And I'm not shy to talk about it because I have, for my, as long as I've been able to steward money in my life, I've always been wanting to know, what does God want me to do with that money? So our time, talent, and treasure. But sometimes we think that somehow money has it's unique. We can hold back. It's okay. But read a little bit about holding back, tithes in the Bible. It's not good, and not actually seeking God's will in your giving. We should all be doing that. And I'm saying this not to the benefit of Cheerfully, or your church. This is a benefit to the believer, that they are being obedient with their finances and that they're stewarding them well. And that is really top of the list. It's not for Cheerfully at this point for this particular comment, or it's you and what your pastor, if they teach on this, it's for you as a believer. You should be really seriously considering how you spend your money. And that's just something I'm saying right now because sometimes it's not being said in our churches. And so that's something that I think Christians need to hear and understand. Tithes, offerings, and alms, and definitely be giving your church regularly, but look for opportunities to give. And right now, Christian education, to me, is outside of your church should be one of those top opportunities. It really should be. And yeah, and charities, your church, and definitely cheerfully, we will steward your donations extremely well. We will make sure that they go where they need to go and that they will help parents enroll their children in Christian private schools, that will be a voice in the public square, and that will help love our neighbors, those who are struggling to meet their basic needs. But yeah, it's a now thing. We need to get on this, and so I just hopefully people understand where I'm coming from, the heart of it all, and that yeah, the kids need our help.
100%. Jay, what is the final thought you would like to leave with our audience this evening?
Well, it's I think big picture, our country needs uh, vocal Christians. So I know it's funny because the title of or the name of the charity is Cheerfully, but I'm having trouble choking up right now. But it's in a good way. It's just this runs deep. So for me, the it's big vision in terms of Canada, because our country is in many ways off the rails. We're in the gutter, and we need to right that. And we as Christians, we need to be doing our part. We're the ones who understand our roots the best. And we are the ones who can send that message unlike any other. And we need to be doing that. And so this public education crisis, but really this cultural crisis, requires us to shake off the apathy, the complacency, the passivity, and to become bold and vocal and fearless ambassadors for Christ. So all is not lost. God is moving Canada. He's always at work. And Second Chronicles 7:14 was a verse that I thought to share, that if my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. I'm trying to keep it cheerfully, but it's hard right now. But yeah, it's just that is the parting thought, um that God is He is with us. He has been merciful and gracious, but we have had many shots across the bow, and some that have landed, in all honesty, in the past 10 years, especially the past 5 years. And if you don't realize that, I'm asking you to realize it now. And it takes intentional and purposeful action to actually uh, correct what is happening in Canada. We can't do it on our own. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't just a dig deep and oh, we're gonna lay into this one and we're gonna fix Canada. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we need to seek God, His will, and how we need to act on it. But in the end, some people are hung up on their, oh, I'm going to, and these are all good things. These are all excellent things. I'm going to my Bible study. I'm going to my prayer group. I'm attending church. And I'm helping out at some of our events. I volunteer. These are all excellent things. But if you don't take church outside of the walls of your physical church, we fail. And we have failed because of that. So we need to get ourselves and our faith outside of the church, in our communities, in our culture, and in all institutions, because God has said that um, He has said that we are to be fruitful, multiply, but that we are to have dominion over this earth. And that's why a lot of people they more appreciate sometimes referring to our country as the Dominion of Canada, right? From sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth, that God has called us to have dominion. And as Christians, we need to go out and we need to do that. And if we do, I believe God will bless our obedience and that he will truly heal, that he will heal and that he will restore and that he will cause Canada to thrive. So um yeah, that's my parting thought is that there is hope and but we do need to get after it. The time is now. Don't wait. Do something about it.
Beautifully said, Jay. And I'd like to leave our audience with a final thought. I've known Jay for a few years now, um, and I can sit here and I can tell you that he's a very humble servant of God. But I don't need to tell you that because you've seen it tonight. You've seen his passion, you've seen his emotion, you've seen the love he has for Christ, for his fellow man, and most of all for our children. Jay was called, he was moved by the Holy Spirit to start cheerfully. He took that leap of faith. And I am asking you in our audience to help cheerfully, to help the mission. It, as Jay said, God blesses us. And what better way to show obedience to God than to bless a charity that is truly following God's leading? I am just so thankful, Jay, that we had the opportunity tonight to speak to a national audience, to bring awareness to what you're doing. And I am just so grateful to you and all that you have put in. You've put in every ounce of your time and love and passion for this charity. And I can't think of a better platform than CHP Talks that is watched by thousands of Christians. And I truly pray that they will come alongside you, see the value of what you're doing, and help impact the lives of their fellow Christian. So, Jay, how can our audience get a hold of you? How can they donate? How can they follow you?
Right. So if you go to our website, it's a it's a good source of information. It'll tell you even more about some of the processes that we use, for tuition aid, for instance, and what I mean when I say public advocacy or in terms of relief of poverty. So you can go there and you can read a little more about the mission and vision statement, that sort of thing. And at the very bottom there's a donate button, and it will take you also to that. It's right around the same area where you can contact us. So cheerfully.ca is the website. So it's cheerfully, just the word cheerfully, CHEERFULLY.ca. And all our social media is at cheerfully 2025. 2025. And then my email is simply Jay at cheerfully.ca. And yeah, and on our website, I mean, I think we all even have a phone number. If you want to give me a call, you can go ahead and do that too. I'll happily answer the phone and talk to you. And just have a conversation. I think a lot of this starts with people realizing we just need to talk sometimes about these issues and they're serious issues. They're heavy, obviously. I mean, I'm here, expressing I think one of my spiritual gifts is crying. But so I tell that shit to the guy sometimes because you get up there and you start chatting and you think, man, this stuff runs deep. But but in any case, we need to just have these conversations. We do need our pastors to be speaking about these things from the pulpit as well. I'll throw that down as well. We really need our congregations to understand the issues of our day and for our pastors to boldly share the truth about what it means to be a Christian in Canada. They need to understand what a Christian position is on these issues and these challenges that we're facing. But yeah, what I'm getting at is just contact me. You can email me, you can call me, you can hit me up on social media. Go to our website, have a look, and down there, please, if you are at all led to give, we ask you to give. You can give either by e-transfer, and if you do that, we just ask that you also share in the message your full name, address, and email so we can get you a tax receipt because we are, as I said, a registered charity. And there's also online payment methods that you can use in terms of if you want to use a debit card or a credit card or transfer. So there are multiple ways to give. And yeah, ultimately though, let's just keep the conversation going because I find a lot of the time what's happening from our opposition is that they want to shut you up and shut you down. And I say reject that fully and wholeheartedly and talk about it anyways. So yeah, shoot me an email, give me a call, hit me up on social media, whatever works for you. And I look forward to hearing from you.
We will have all of the information Jay just went over in the description of this video, so it'll be as easy as clicking a link. And I would also like to add that if you do feel compelled to donate, that would be fantastic, but also consider being a monthly donor. Think about ways that you waste money, whether it's going to grab coffee or fast food, things that you literally don't need. You could take that $10, $20, $30 a month and really make a difference in a child's life. So I would highly encourage you, if you have the means, if you have the desire, if you see the value in this cause, which I would think that you do, yes, there's an option for monthly giving as well. So as I said, we will put all of the ways you can get a hold of Cheerfully in the description of this video. Jay, I can't thank you enough for coming on CHP Talks and sharing your journey and the first year of Cheerfully. It's been such a blessing watching Cheerfully unfold, and I am just so hopeful and optimistic about the future and all the wonderful things I think that you're going to be doing to help not only your fellow man, but for the next generation coming up.
Yeah, thank you very much. And one thing I'll just add in too is we're trying to get in contact also with foundations. And so if there's anybody who has a private or public foundation who would like to know more about Cheerfully, please contact us because we would like to partner with some foundations to hopefully help ratchet up what we can do because the school year is coming up. There are people who we have helped throughout the year, mid-year, but the September is around the corner, and I've gone to some of the orientations have already happened, the information nights at the schools, and so we do want to try and step up where we're at in terms of our funding so that we're ready for September. So if there is somebody who is in a foundation or has the means to perhaps donate in such a way, we would really look forward to hearing from them. But yeah, Beth, I just really appreciate the opportunity to come on CHP Talks and to share about Cheerfully, to promote it, because it really is something that I think has somewhat been marginalized, definitely in our culture. There are so many things going on in Canada and around the world, and sometimes this becomes a blind spot. But we need to really shine a light on it and do something about it. Like I said, do something about it now. So I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
And one last ask of the audience. Share this video far and wide. Please repost it on all of your social media channels. Send the link via text or email to a friend. We truly want this episode to not only encourage you, but inspire others to take the mantle like Jay did. It was a calling that he had, And look where he is now. And Jay should be proof positive to everyone that anyone can make a difference in our country. So please share this video out far and wide. I'd like to thank you for joining us today here on CHP Talks. I'd also like to thank Rod for giving me the opportunity to guest host this week. Thank you so much. And as always, God bless.